Hello, everybody. I'm Cindy Breaden, the SVP of Sales for EnsoData. I want to thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. I know how incredibly busy, or morning, depending on where you are. If you're West Coast people like Dr. Breaden, I'm going to cover a couple of housekeeping things before we dive in. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. In talking with our customers over the past year, we have discovered that the decrease in in-lab testing volume has allowed them to research new technologies and help streamline the processes in their clinics. From evaluating new tools to helping facilitate telemedicine, looking at software to streamline patient intake and engagement, or launching new and optimizing programs like HSAT or a sleep navigation program. Many of the technologies implemented during the pandemic were done so out of sheer necessity to adjust to a new environment for providing healthcare. However, we did notice that some business leaders were using the downtime to look at implementing new tools as well as solutions that could help grow their business post-pandemic and reach more patients as the sleep testing volumes go back on the rise. In order to help provide some guidance to those looking to add new technology in their business, we asked some of our customers to share their journey on implementing EnsoSleep, from how they knew it was the right time to evaluate a solution to how they measured their success. Our hope is you can come away from this webinar with practical takeaways that you can apply when adding new technology to your sleep center, or that you might even consider EnsoSleep as part of that plan. Okay, now I'm going to take a minute to introduce our panelists. We have a great group that has volunteered to work with us today. First, Dr. Radhika Breaden, MD, MPH, DABMS, is a sleep medicine physician board certified in clinical informatics and the medical director of Pacific Sleep Program in one of the largest dedicated sleep medicine clinics in the Pacific Northwest, with 2 AASM accredited sleep clinics in Oregon. Dr. Breaden has broad experience in treating the full range of sleep disorders and has been awarded the Portland Top Doctors Award in Sleep Medicine for 2021. Under Dr. Breaden's leadership, Pacific Sleep implemented the Epic EMR, resulting in EMR integration with multiple care systems in Oregon, and also led the restructuring of the sleep laboratory, including new Cadwell software and hardware implementation, and integration of the Cadwell polysomnography interpretations into the Epic environment. In addition, Dr. Breaden created a new pediatric sleep medicine program and leads her clinic as an Inspire Neurostimulator Center of Excellence for the Pacific Northwest. Most recently, she led the adoption of AI scoring technology with EnsoData in the sleep laboratories in her clinic. We also must note she has a fantastic last name, and there is no relation between this Cindy Breaden and that Dr. Breaden. John Childers, RRT, RPSGT, is the sleep center supervisor at St. Joseph Health in Bryan, Texas. John has over 30 years of extensive experience in sleep medicine, from managing the clinical aspects of a large DME company, owner-operator at a DME, respiratory therapist and director of cardiopulmonary EMS radiology laboratory, owner-president of a startup sleep lab, which eventually sold with 200% ROI, and his current position within one of the largest health systems in the US. He is a true entrepreneurial spirit, and in his free time manages a real estate investment firm he started over 20 years ago, and is a member of the AARC, NVRC, TSRC, AASM, AAST, TSSP, and the Madisonville Christian Fellowship. And we have Lisa Bond, RST, RPSGT, who has been in the healthcare field since the late 80s and in the sleep field since the early 1990s, when she discovered that sleep medicine was her passion and calling. Lisa has worked many positions, from acquisition tech to lab manager. She's presently the Director of Clinical Services and Scoring for Advanced Sleep Management. Lisa won the AAST 2014 Sharon Keenan Award for Outstanding Contributions to Sleep Technology Education, and recently won the AAST 2015 Service Award for making significant contributions to growth and development in the sleep technology profession. As an OSA patient, Lisa also considers herself to be a patient advocate and believes that can best be accomplished by passing on her knowledge and helping sleep technologists to become exceptional technologists. As you can see, we have quite the esteemed panel. They have expertise just across sleep medicine, and we've got the whole country covered. We really can't say enough about how happy we are to have them share their vast knowledge and to walk us through how to build a successful sleep center tech stack. With that, I thought we would get things kicked off, and I would love if our panelists could tell us a little bit about their sleep center. We have so many, oh gosh, we have over 100 people on, and it'll give you an opportunity to find somebody whose sleep center might be similar to yours so that you can learn from their specific experience. So with that, Dr. Breaden, do you mind telling us a little bit about your sleep center?
Sure. So thank you, first of all, for having me as part of this esteemed panel. I appreciate being able to exchange this information. The Civic Sleep program has been in practice for almost 40 years at this point. It was founded by Dr. Gerald B. Rich, who was one of the first sleep doctors in the Pacific Northwest, having come from Johns Hopkins in his training before there was even such a thing as a sleep program. And he founded 2 clinics, one in the Portland metropolitan area, as well as one on the Oregon coast. And so we have these clinics. We have 4 beds in each clinic. We run those beds every night or almost every night, and we have 5 physician assistants and nurse practitioners, as well as 2 physicians. And we see the broad range of sleep disorders, both pediatric and adult, mostly sleep disordered breathing, because that's what most of us do see, but also, the full range of parasomnias, narcolepsy, all of those things as well. So we are a comprehensive sleep clinic. We provide DME services. This is fundamental bread and butter what we do.
That's awesome. Lisa, can you let us know a little bit about your center?
Well, Advanced Sleep Management is a full line management program that we have, where we provide equipment, technicians, IT support, custom interpretation, report templates, do the scoring, the hosting, all that kind of stuff. We also offer accreditation assistance with either the AASM or the ACHC. We give policies, procedures, and of course we deal with the Joint Commission. So we have kind of a little bit broader of a spectrum in that we deal with several different labs throughout the United States, and we pretty much focus a lot on trying to make sure that the program is efficient and that it's cost effective for the companies that we work with.
Fantastic. John.
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you, Cindy, for EnsoData putting this on. I think it's a great idea, and I hope people really take something from this to use at home. Here at St. Joseph Health Sleep Center, we're a small sleep lab. We're in a small market. Started off back in the mid-'80s as just St. Joseph. We have since merged with CHI, who then merged with Dignity, and it became Common Spirit, who is now a mega system out there in the country. So we're a lot bigger than we were in just Bryan College Station area. So we are a fully accredited ASM 4-bed sleep center. Our medical staff consists of 3 pulmonologists and a sleep specialist. Soon to bring on 2 more sleep specialists, which I hope will really help drive our volume. But we're always looking for technology. We're always looking for ways to improve our services. We're always looking for ways to educate our patients and our community to bring sleep awareness. So that's really been our passion, is education and understanding of our community about sleep.
Well, I know I'm newer to sleep than by like a lot compared to you guys, but in general in the industry, and I know already just from talking to you guys, not only here, but just in day-to-day support and exploring things, that there are so many really exciting things that you're each doing at your lab. So I'm excited for you able to share it. So we're gonna break the topics into 4 main areas: knowing when the time is right, getting the staff and management on board, managing implementation, and measuring success. We figure this might be the best way for everybody to take notes and digest information. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the timing. How did you know when the timing was right to add new technology? So with that, I'm going to open up to John with the first question. What tools or software have you incorporated in your clinic in the last 2 years?
Well, we've incorporated a couple of different things in the last few years. One is what we call mining. And what that is we actually go into the clinic's databases, their EMRs, and source out patients or find patients that with certain comorbidities or things that would put them at risk. We then reach out to those patients by letter and say, hey, you need to reach out to your primary care doctor and talk to them about sleep apnea. We also include a stop bang with that in hopes that they would feel that there's some sort of help for them to help with their sleep. The other thing we've added is EnsoData, which really in the beginning I wasn't for sure about. I had met the guys in San Antonio who were demonstrating it and talked to them and pretty extensively, kept going back to their booth, and asking more questions and wanting more examples, and even got some references from them. Over time, I thought, this is something we really need to look at. So before the conference was over, I had already talked to my supervisor, and we invited EnsoData to Bryan College Station from San Antonio, which is about a 3-hour trip. And Nick actually made the trip, meet with my supervisor, and sat down and explained it. And after that, we kind of kept that ball rolling. And after about a year going through all the process, we finally implemented it. And that was really, the goal was to save time in scoring and give us more time to do other things that we deemed necessary.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Breaden, how about you? I know you've had a lot of new things come into your clinic the last couple of years.
Right, absolutely. So we actually implemented our EMR and Cadwell about 5-6 years ago. And, as with anything new, you're getting your workflows in, you're getting, all your processes and your pieces in place. And, as we got accustomed to those things, we had also started doing inspired neurostimulator therapy and, starting to see those patients as well. As everybody has seen across the country, the patients that we typically bring in the lab are more complex than they used to be in the past because the simpler patients typically get home sleep studies due to many of the insurance company policies. And so we were noticing that one of the bottlenecks that was keeping Dr. Kim and I from doing our sleep study interpretations and moving forward had to do with the timeliness of the scoring. So, the techs at our clinic do score on the fly, but obviously if there are, more complex patients, if it's a tough night, if we really want them to spend more time on good mask fitting and all of those things, then sometimes the scoring wasn't done, as completely as we would have wanted by the morning, or they may not have been able to score at all, which was then leaving a lot of scoring during the day, which again was in the cascading problem, which is then, we didn't get to do the interpretation for a few days, and, it all just kind of carried into that. So we decided that we wanted to really streamline that work. We wanted to have our techs spend more time with the patients, and we wanted to make sure that the studies were reliably ready to be interpreted. And so we decided that we wanted to go with EnsoData. And I had actually reached out after a conference, similar to what John says, and at that time, EnsoData did not have a platform that worked with our sleep study software. They did not have something that worked with Cadwell. So I just kind of reached out periodically and said, hey, let us know when something comes up. Let us know when you're ready, for prime time. And then as soon as that was ready, then we were contacted. From a timing perspective, it actually kind of hit at a time that I had initially thought would be good, but wasn't so much, which is that our volumes were down because of COVID, and we thought, okay, well, this is a good time for us to, look at a new piece of software. And this was just right at the beginning of the COVID shutdown. And I think what we learned was that everybody was just so stressed and frazzled, and telemedicine and all the other things that we we were adopting to try to cope with, our new workflows just made us not able to pay as much attention to it. So we deferred our timing for a few months, and then we're able to, pay more attention and really engage in the process. So I think, just in terms of the adoption of any technology, as we know, whenever you're bringing something into your clinic, you want to make sure that it is the right time and it's not overlapping with 3 other things that are going on at once. So
doesn't everybody have a million things going on at once?
right, it feels that way. Yeah, if you can
fantastic.
find that gap, if you can
Yeah,
find
when
that
there's
gap.
less. Yeah, that is fantastic advice. Lisa.
Well, we've been working with EnsoData for a number of years, well past the 2 years you're asking about. So we've really, I can't say, what exactly is a good time for somebody else, but for us, time was back a few years ago when we went ahead and decided we really wanted to streamline things, as has been mentioned. We also wanted to make sure that the patients that are coming into the lab now are so much more complicated than the patients we used to get way back when. I mean, it's just, they've got so many comorbidities. We wanted our night techs to not do scoring unless they felt like they needed to help them with something. We wanted them to concentrate on taking care of that patient. And we needed to try and keep that turnaround time with the scoring up there, because as Dr. Breaden mentioned, you don't want to take too long in getting the interpret and such done and out. So for us, it was really a natural step to look into AI, and we've worked a lot with you guys and your engineers to make sure it worked with our various platforms, because we have different platforms. I mean, we've got the Alice platforms, we've got the old Sandman platforms in some places, we got SleepWorks in other places, and so because of that, we needed something that would work with pretty much with everything that we needed and all the different home study devices. And you guys have just always been such a pleasure to work with and so easy to help with everything. So, we found you guys work very well, better than other systems that we tried. Some of the other things that we tried for AI, we found we spent more time correcting it than if we just done it from scratch ourselves. With you guys, that's not been a problem. You guys are just, I believe you guys do a thing where you do a comparison to as well to see how much the scores change and such, so that you guys can dial things in and such. And that for us has really been a lifesaver.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I even think early on, Lisa, we weren't doing great with you guys, and you really committed to working with us to get things streamlined. And I know this is an overall conversation on technology, but with that, it's such a great example that I want to highlight that a bit, because it's machine learning and AI. It learns to adapt to how you do things, and we do see exactly how much somebody is changing so that we can make adjustments. So I always tell people coming in, which all 3 of you guys were fantastic with, let us know what's working, what's not working, because it does take a little while to get it finessed, and it's not going to be right away. If it was, it probably wouldn't be very customizable or easy to use. So that's fantastic advice. Lisa, we're going to stick with you. Why did you bring in new technology, or what challenges or obstacles were you hoping to overcome?
Well, part of the reason we brought it in is, like I said, we really wanted to make sure we could get our turnaround times done. We wanted to get things out as quickly as possible. Some of these patients are very severe. They need to be treated rather quickly, and we didn't want that slowing us down. The other thing is we wanted to try and streamline some things, take some of that work off of the night techs, make sure that they weren't being hammered with some things. One of the things that I really like that you guys can do with EnsoData is you can overwrite everything that the night techs do or not, depending on the tech on your center's preference. Our night techs like that because they can go through and they can just pick one click on a hypopnea, say, and they're trying to count to see if they need to split. They can just go and see dropping. It doesn't matter if it's the right event type. They're counting the numbers, and it's get wiped out in the morning, and it gets redone by you guys. So that made things faster and easier and less work for them to try and, go through and make sure everything was marked properly and all that kind of stuff. It took a lot of pressure off of our night techs. we also wanted our scoring staff to stay the core that we have. We have a really good group. Our doctors love the staff we have. We do some preliminary stuff for the interps to get them, partially prepared for them. They all know what the different doctors want, how they like things, the verbiage they prefer. We just really didn't want to have to bring anybody new in as we were growing and have to go through all that onboarding and all of that extensive training that you need to do to get that in there. And with EnsoData coming in, it streamlined things so much. It made it so much easier that we have the same core staff and they're able to do so much more. So we took work off the night techs, and we also made it easier for our scoring staff to do more work and make sure we keep that physician satisfaction.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And John, I know you mentioned a couple of different things that you were trying to provide for the patients and stuff. Do you want to elaborate a little on the obstacles that you were trying to overcome as you brought in some new technology?
Yeah, as Lisa and Dr. Breaden has both mentioned, it's a challenging world out there right now that we're in as far as sleep goes, and this virus and all of the stuff going on that we're facing, the decrease in patients that we're seeing in our labs and our clinics. So as we ramp back up and as we reach back out and really try to drive our numbers and get our numbers back up to where they were and beyond, we have to have a way to maintain our productivity, which we know that productivity is a big catchphrase now, that everyone has to be productive and our numbers have to be there. And so they're not going to add staff automatically. They want to see those numbers first. So what we have to do is, as we drive the referrals and as more patients are coming into our lab through our mining marketing, and we're reaching out to those patients as they come into our labs, we're not going to be able to automatically add staff. So what we have to do is figure out how are we going to manage that increase in numbers with the same staff we have. So the night shift, the 2-to-1 ratio is not going to change much. The day shift is where your flexibility comes in. So you can't really do a lot with that day shift. You're not going to add another score if you're not there with the numbers. So EnsoData allowed us to give that day shift technician, that scorer, more time to be able to go out and do more marketing, to drive the numbers even more, to reach out to patient events, community events where we can do education, those types of things. So the challenges was trying to figure out where all that fit in together and making sure that our administration kind of knew what our game plan was, why we needed EnsoData, so we didn't have to necessarily add the added day shift. And then at some point, whenever the numbers permit, then we can add more day shift. But we'll still have EnsoData managing that scoring in the background. So that's been kind of the challenges and the benefits of this.
Dr. Breaden, I know you mentioned outsourcing, but was there any other main obstacle that you were trying to overcome by adding technology?
I think we were trying to look for consistency as well. I think that was one of the things, is even though our night techs were, scoring, obviously people learn different, habits, and, physicians may have certain things that they like being done a certain way, even though we're all trying to score by ASM. I think we were trying to look for consistency. I think we were trying to look for productivity in terms of, hearkening to what John has said, making sure that we were, getting those things through and productive. So those were the challenges. We've also, sometimes you'll have transitions of staff. We had our previous sleep lab manager actually moved into another managerial position at our clinic. He had been scoring with us for many years. He knew how to score exactly the way Dr. Kim and I liked it, and he was very efficient at that. Our newer sleep lab manager did not have that level of experience, and so the efficiency and the productivity wasn't quite where we wanted it to be, and that, combined with the fact that we were having more complex patients, was again making a cascading problem. So one of the things that we have been very happy with EnsoData is that this will give us that reliable system. You know, if there are transitions, if someone is ill, if, you know, somebody moves or something like that, if a new tech comes in and, you know, they're just out of school and they're, you know, not up to, you know, speed with scoring, or if we have a fantastic tech, as we have had, who has been wonderful with patient care, but just isn't a good scorer in terms of being able to multitask that way. We're able to keep those, you know, really good employees that we value and not have the scoring and the quality of scoring hinge on those kind of transitions, which, as we know, are kind of the day-to-day thing that happen in sleep labs.
That is fantastic. And I think I can tell you, somebody who speaks on EnsoSleep, we don't think about that enough. I know everybody likes to be able to free up some time to do other things, but being able to do that with consistency, obviously very important when you're running a lab. So, okay, ending the timing, I'm going to give each of you guys a chance to kind of do your final thoughts on best advice you would give somebody on considering the right timing. Dr. Breaden, I know you spoke to it earlier, but what are your thoughts on best advice?
Yes, even though we always have those balls juggling as we do, try to pick a time where you don't expect a software upgrade somewhere else, a new equipment being put in somewhere else. And, you know, also really engage your staff in the process, get them excited about it. And I know we might talk a little more about how to engage people in that process. But I think the timing, you know, it can't be a top-down thing. It has to really be, you know, everybody, let's pick a good time together. This is something new, this is something exciting, and this is something that we feel is a tool that will help the lab. Not, as everybody was saying, it's not to replace or supplant anybody, but it's to help everybody do our jobs better and more you know, efficiently. You know, let's all sit together and think about when a good time is. And so that's what I would recommend.
Perfect. Lisa, best advice on timing?
I think the timing is now. AI is here. It's not leaving. You might as well go ahead and embrace it. I'd say if you're hesitant about it, you can start with something small and like just use it on your HSTs to start with so that you can get used to it. You can see what it brings and how it works. And then you can advance and add, you know, your in labs and stuff like that. So I really just think people, I mean, if you're resisting this, I mean, I don't know why you're resisting it. It's going to happen with, you know, we've got the AASM with an entire committee devoted to AI and incorporating it and coming up with policies, procedures, and et cetera for everyone. So I think the time is now. But even if you are changing EMRs or sleep platforms or whatever, EnsoData is absolutely fantastic about helping you with those kinds of transitions and such. And I just say, you know, go ahead and start small with just your home studies if you want, just so you can kind of ease yourself and your staff into it.
Fantastic. John, I know you had a couple of things that you brought in for your team in the last year. So how did you determine the right time to do so? Oh, you're muted.
We talked about that, didn't we, about muting? I think timing is really, it depends on your system, where you are, what your staff looks like. I think you have to really evaluate the technology you're bringing, what it's going to do for your center. You know, we always want to bring technology that's going to improve patient service and the bottom line, essentially. So you're going to look at all of that. I think you have to really evaluate that. But I think, as Lisa was saying, you can't overlook AI, because AI is here. It's going to be part of our system. It's going to be part of our world in the sleep world. So I think you have to really evaluate it and decide when it's time for you. But I think you really need to be opening your eyes.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to move on to buy-in. And the first question I have is, were you the decision maker in the process? And if you were not, how did you convince management that a solution, anything new, EnsoSleep or anything else, would be helpful for your clinic? So John, do you mind taking those two?
No, I think that I was the influencer and also the decision maker, even though there's administration above me that ultimately made the yes and no decision. But I had to present it But first, I had to sell it to myself. I had to make sure that me as a professional in sleep and what they think of as the expert in sleep had to understand and believe it. And with the research and the due diligence that I had done in EnsoData and EnsoSleep, I believed it. So I presented that along with the help of Nick and EnsoSleep's team, because they really did a lot to help our IT people understand what it is, what it's going to mean, how safe it is, make sure that it meets HIPAA criteria and all of that stuff. So I think with the help of EnsoData and me having my own buy-in in it, I think that's really what it was. Is just going to them and saying, this is what I think, this is what I believe, this is the numbers, this is how it pans out, and then let them make the decision. But ultimately, they look back for me for that decision. So,
John, did you have any difficulties with staff, again, for EnsoSleep or any other technology? How do you work with staff that might be hesitant to, sometimes things change workflow or changes expectations?
So with our staff in the sleep lab, they really were in from the beginning, because I think, again, explaining to them what the effects were going to be of having this extra time. First question they said was, does that mean we don't have to score at night? I said, no, you still have to score and keep track of the patient, but this is going to help whoever's scoring during the daytime not have to score all of those PLMs or not have to score all of those arousals. This is going to be a benefit for them, which in turn benefits you. So that's it wasn't hard to convince the team. As far as any troubles with the EnsoData team, man, I cannot give them greater kudos. They were wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can brag a lot on our support team. They're fantastic. So thank you, John. Dr. Breaden, I know you were the main decision maker. So with that, how did you get the rest of the team or the staff, how did you get buy-in on any new technology that you bring in?
Yeah, so actually hearkening back to something I believe Lisa said, my staff was actually skeptical that any type of AI solution could work because of their previous negative experience with scoring softwares. So I think the thing that came in was kind of, oh, another one, been there, done that. We've already tried this. We've already tried different, things that didn't work, and either the PLMs were overscored or underscored, and I spent half my life trying to correct it, or there was just something that was off. And so I think there was that skepticism that was there. But I think, again, just finding the right timing to say, look, if we can make this work, it's a very different model of how to score. As I may have mentioned earlier, being interested in scoring, my husband's actually a software engineer, and several years ago, he and I had actually worked on some scoring software because, scoring is a very rule-based thing. And so it was just it seemed like scoring was a natural for some type of software to work with. And what I found once we got into it was that it was a lot harder than I thought, and that there were so many things that weren't about over-analyzing the exact frequency of every single, second of sleep, but was really, I could just look at it as a sleep doctor and say, well, that's a hypopnea. Well, that's a limb movement. Well, that's this. And it was very hard to actually program based on the waves themselves. So when I learned that what the AI solution would be was not based on that over-analysis of every single wave and every single artifacty thing that was happening, but rather the broad, how do people score, visual scoring model, and then implementing that, learning from that and implementing that was a very different way to consider that scoring. And so because it was different than anything else we used, I was able to, talk to my staff about the fact that, I think this might be a very new and different solution that will really help us, in terms of our efficiency.
That is such great points. I know all of us know lots of people that work in the health field, and adding EMRs. I have some nurse friends that say they do as much time on administrative stuff as they do with patient care. So I think you have great advice on, talking to them about other things that maybe not have gone as well, and getting them involved. I think that's fantastic advice. Lisa, how involved were you? I know with Enso, it was a while ago, but I also know you guys have a ton of different technology that you use with devices in the office. So how do you introduce new technology? How involved are you, and how do you overcome staff?
I'm very involved in it, but I think what you're really wanting to know is how do you get your staff to buy in, and how do you get your doctors to buy in? And one of the things that I mentioned before that was really helpful was that information we were able to get back about what we were changing from what you had scored, and working with your engineers one-on-one and giving them samples and saying, okay, on this patient, here's an example where it overscored this, or this is where an example where it underscored. And you guys dialed that in. I mean, you know, it's been a while, but you guys, we worked with you and you dialed it in. And we were able to show the amount of changes that we were making compared to what you guys had already done for the pre-scoring of it. And we're able to show that as we dialed it in, that number went down, 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 the amount of changes we were making. So our doctors were more than willing to buy in when they could see that we overlooked it and still we're not making a lot of changes. And they were seeing that consistency that Dr. Breaden mentioned with everybody is being the same across the board. For the staff, there were some concerns about, oh, you're going to replace me with, you know, AI. No, we're going to actually make your job a little easier because you'll just be kind of reviewing it, and we won't have to bring in more new staff. You'll have a different workflow. You may have a different number of studies that you'll be processing. You'll probably process more of them than you did before, but in many ways, it's a lot easier. I think John maybe was the one who mentioned PLMs. If anybody who's ever had to sit there and click on individual PLMs will tell you, it's a great way to get carpal tunnel. And you guys mark all that stuff for us, and we don't have to do that. So the staff, as we tested it, I get, you know, wanted their buy-in. Do you see you're changing it a lot? You know, and they were like, actually, no. And they were noticing things like, this is actually easier than having to go in and you know, with stuff we've done before, tried other AIs, and there was just so much work. This was really easy. And being able to reach out, you guys are always available. I don't think we've ever had any problems reaching you guys for technical support. And reaching out to you guys and saying, can we dial this in a little bit better? It seems to be overscoring RIRAs or underscoring RIRAs. And it may be that on one software platform, it's doing great, but on another one, it wasn't doing so good. And you guys making those tiny little adjustments that you needed to make, it just made everything so much easier and so much more consistent. So even with us using all these different types of platforms, I mean, my scoring staff after a little bit was like, wow, this is a lot easier. And they were perfectly content to not mark 1,000 limb movements. Trust me on that one.
It's good to know. Okay, so now we have an area where we're going to talk about implementation. And I know this is much more specific to EnsoSleep, but I know we did get a lot of questions about this on compatibility with your existing devices or software and EnsoSleep. And I know all of you guys are using different things. So Lisa, if you don't mind saying again, just what software and devices you're using, and then if you had any issues at all with compatibility, or if you have advice for people.
We use the Alice system that in one spot. We have an old Sandman in another. We have SleepWorks. We've used different ones, and really we had no problems with implementation. You guys get in there, you do your thing, and you get out, and it's so easy to set this up and start it. And as I said, you guys were able to, because different software does do some different things, you guys were able to dial in and adjust for the different softwares that we've used. So it's been absolutely fantastic as far as that goes. We have not had any issues with being able to use it. I mean, to say it's easy is an understatement.
Was there anything in particular that you would say would have been the most difficult for implementation?
Keeping our hands off and letting you guys do it. Our IT guys in particular had a hard time with that because they wanted to be, they were like all prepared for all this hard work they were going to have to do. And we ported you guys in, and you guys just went, and they just sat back and watched. And I think for our IT guys, that was hard. to just sit back and watch you guys do your thing, and you got it all set it up, all tweaked, everything going. And then after that, it was just us giving some feedback to dial it in a little bit better. But yeah, our IT guys had a hard time with sitting on their hands.
I have some control issues myself, and I hate IT, but I think I would have the same same issues. John, how about you for what devices you're using, if there's any sort of issues? And this one, again, this is a question that's a bit more specific to Enso, but for compatibility.
We use Neon Coding and Polysmith for both our in-lab and home studies. In the beginning of this process with EnsoData, they had never set up with Neon Coding, so they weren't 100% sure how that was going to happen. But as soon as we started talking, they began researching. And by the time we made our decision here at St. Joe's, they had already had it figured out and were ready. And so once we gave them the go, then they started meeting with our IT guys and going back and forth with those guys. And once they got all of that in the woods kind of stuff figured out, our IT guys were very impressed with EnsoData and their knowledge and how they were able to deal with any questions or concerns that they may have. Now, I'll let you know that we're dealing now with a mega corporation who is very deep and loves red tape. And so that was probably the most trying time for us, waiting for all of that to play. But Nick and the team at EnsoData were very patient, very understanding. They've been through it before. They helped keep us up to date as what was going on, where we were. So the implementation, that was probably the toughest part, was getting through that whole IT and the corporate red tape. But I have to say again, EnsoData did a wonderful job. They walked through it. They were very knowledgeable, had the answers. And by the end of the day, whenever we did implement it and get it started, it worked great with our Neon Coding system and Polysmith. We did delay home studies a couple of weeks because they had some quirks they wanted to work out. But once they got those worked out, it was fine. So, I think that the implementation was to be expected, a little bit different, but it worked out just as planned, I think.
Isn't it amazing, John, how smooth it goes?
It really is amazing, and it's amazing to me that EnsoData understands our IT guys. I don't understand anything they say. So EnsoData understood everything they said. So it was great from my standpoint.
Yeah, I'm going to give the plug again to you guys too, because I do get to see the installations, and it really is about giving good feedback, because the software does not work fantastically on its own up front. When things aren't getting scored right, I think, Lisa, you had mentioned it, saying, it's overscoring RERAs and having examples of things. It's really amazing what the team can tweak. So you all get equal credit on that, although our success team is fantastic. Dr. Breaden, I know for you, I know you said you guys had a lot going on the first time, but you were also one of our very first Cadwell customers, and
right.
The beta didn't go spectacularly the first time on our end either. And then the second time, I think we all were able to knock it out of the park. But do you have any advice on the implementation process, anything that went particularly well, or things to look out for?
Yeah. So since we were one of the early Cadwell customers, I think that was probably the biggest challenge. Cadwell is so smooth in certain ways, but it has a certain glitchiness. And unfortunately, when you get one piece of software that can have some old glitchiness in it, and then you add another piece of software on top of that, and things are kind of, being, in the background, not clicking the way it should, then the challenge was not actually as much the scoring as much as getting the uploading, downloading process and all of those things happening in a more consistent way. What was really nice for us, though, was we were able to reach out to Cadwell and to reach out to the engineering team. EnsoData, of course, did that reaching out to Cadwell as well, but we also reached out to Cadwell and said, hey, we're one of your customers here, and we really want this, and this is the future, so please share your information so that this can work well. And once everybody was kind of collaborating on those things, things changed rapidly to where a few months later now EnsoData scored is now a status that's in Cadwell. And so, to have that kind of integration would not happen without the team really listening, seeing the problems, investigating them. So in the beginning, during the implementation, we met weekly, and we would then go over some of the challenges we were having. And what was so impressive to me was that, you know, there weren't any excuses. There weren't kind of like, oh, that's the way it's going to be, or, finger pointing, well, it's your system, it's this. You know, it was really about, let's figure out what's going on. Let's look into this. You know, we might meet on a Monday, and by Monday afternoon, I would get an email saying, hey, you know, we've talked to these folks. We figured out where we think the code needs to be changed. The code implementation is going to go in tomorrow night, and we're going to have, you know, the new software fix in by Wednesday. Let's see if that works for the rest of the week. I mean, that kind of iterative change and improvement, it's just, you don't see it anywhere. You don't see that kind of thing at all, you know. So nobody's saying, oh, it needs to improve in the version 2 years from now. We're saying it's going to improve by the end of the week. And so even in that 4-week process at the beginning, huge leaps in terms of what was happening by week 4, as opposed to what the glitches were on week 1, once we were able to work through it. And so, so that implementation process, it's as you said, the best way to take advantage of that is specific feedback, is saying, here's a study where this wasn't working well, or these were 3 studies, you know, that didn't upload correctly. You know, let's figure out what the similarity was about them that caused that to happen. So those specific examples were really what helped to make, you know, the whole process work so much more smoothly. And now it's actually to the point where I was just talking to my sleep lab manager on Friday nights, on Saturday mornings. He just clicks the button to upload to Enso. And then if Dr. Kim and I want to get ahead of our work week and want to score and interpret our Friday night studies, we can just go into the Cadwell dashboard and just do our own scrub. I mean, we're a little picky sometimes anyway. So, you know, if we have the time on our hands and we want to get ahead of the week, you know, it's done by 8:30 in the morning on Saturday morning, and we can just get that, you know, get those studies out and get them going and get the patient care going, because, you know, the quality has gotten to that level. So, so we're really happy with that whole process of implementation and where it's brought us at this point.
I think you brought up a fantastic point about the device companies, you know, and Cadwell being willing to work with us, to work with you. It's so important. I looked, we only have US people. I thought maybe if there's somebody from Switzerland on, I could do a shout out, because we would like to be Switzerland. We would like to be able to work with everybody. You know, we have shared customers that are all trying to increase the levels of patient care. So it really does work best when everybody's working together and working on the feedback. So,
and one of the other things I wanted to point out is that besides everybody keeps asking about the equipment, do you use this sleep equipment or what? But we also utilize both Lab Retriever and Somnoware, and it's slightly different processes for uploading into those and being able to score. And you guys worked all of those little details out. I mean, we didn't have to worry about any of that. You were like, oh, I know exactly what to do. And you guys work directly with both Lab Retriever and with Somnoware to resolve any questions that they had about incorporating EnsoData into their systems and how the workflow would go for them. So you guys have just been absolutely great. So that's another thing that that you guys do have, is you don't work with the sleepwear, but you also work with some of these other platforms too.
Yeah, that's such a great point, right? Because it's always about getting the right diagnosis to the patient, getting them the care they need. So everybody on a joint mission. Okay, so we've only got a couple of minutes, but I do want to get in measuring success, because I think, you know, outside of EnsoSleep, anything that you bring into your clinic, whether it's your lab or you work at a big health system, you know, there's expense, there's workflow changes, there's getting everybody to buy in. So, you know, we can quickly go through, you know, how you set goals or how you measured success, if it was, you know, specific to numbers, if it was patient experience. Lisa, we'll have you go first.
We looked at things like, we have constantly are monitoring data all the time. We looked at our efficiency, how quickly were we able to turn things around. So that was one of our measures that we had, was the speed that things increased and how much of a workload we could handle as that was increasing as well. And we were able to show both of those. We were able to look at how the costs and how it was improving our costs on different things. And, you know, that's the kind of number crunching that we did to be able to say this is, you know, is definitely worth it. And, you know, you guys have got such a good product that it really has decreased the effort on our end. As far as trying to be efficient, we don't have to worry as much about it because this just streamlines everything. It's so easy to use. It really smoothed out a lot of the bumps and stuff. So for us, it was, you know, we monitored those things and saw a huge increase in our turnaround time.
Did you have specific goals? I know you mentioned being able to add locations without adding staff. Was that kind of a high level goal?
That was a good goal because, yeah, our doctors really like the staff that we have, and we wanted to keep that good core staff and make sure that they were happy, that our doctors were happy, and yeah, that was one of it. And part of it was that faster turnaround time, because I think Dr. Breaden has mentioned before, you don't want a patient waiting forever for that interp. And so the more we can get done, the quicker we can get it done and get it to the doctors, the quicker they can get it out and get these patients treated and get them on their equipment, you know, the better for everybody. And so, yeah, it was a you know, an important part of making sure that we were efficient and cost effective at the same time and not losing quality, because you don't want to be fast and lose quality. So you guys were able to keep that quality there for us.
Good, thank you. John, you had mentioned, you know, it sounds like you have a ton of support from leadership at your health system, which is fantastic, but obviously you wanted to present to them some goals to bringing technology and then sharing the results after. So do you have any advice on how you set the goals or measured success?
Well, our first goal when we went into this was to free up time for myself. I'm kind of a one-man show on the day shift. I'm the scoring tech, I'm the supervisor, I'm the marketer, I'm the educator. I do just all of it. You know, problem solver, you know, something's going wrong, that's they come to John. But so what I was trying to do is free up time, because we haven't had a lot of time to implement new processes, to do a lot of marketing, those types of things. So when we started this, that's what we wanted. We got to free up some time. So once we implemented it, we started measuring even prior to how long was I spending scoring studies, and just took an average. And then 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month into it, we kind of compared that data. And then what we realize now is I've freed up about 75% of my time, scoring time. So that's a lot of time over, you know, a month's time. So what we met that goal. So we freed up that time for me to get out and market. And since that's happened, we've met that goal. So there's been a specific practice in town that we've kind of noticed their numbers falling off. We haven't been receiving the referrals. So I went out and had lunch, visited with them, talked to them, spent an hour and a half meeting with their PAs and the doctors, identified some issues, educated them a little bit about what we're doing. Bam, our numbers are back up from that particular practice. We are now starting a sleep navigator program. So with the hospital, we're going to insert a person in the hospital to help these patients that need sleep studies, medical equipment, whatever they might need, sleep related, to help that out. So those things would not have happened if it would not have been for EnsoData and our technology to free up that time.
Yeah, you guys did a great job setting specific time measurements that you wanted to see. We know because we were able to create a case study off of it with the specifics. So not, you know, some people keep more aspirational, you know, staff is happier, patients are happier, but it was fantastic because you kept very specific numbers, which was exciting to see. And Dr. Breaden, I know you're very data driven as well, setting goals or measuring those goals. How did you achieve that?
So we're fairly new in our implementation, so we're doing this kind of in a stepwise, iterative fashion. What I would say is our first realized goal was better quality of life for Dr. Kim and I for interpretations that we didn't have to wait until 5:30 at night to get our scrubbed studies, so that we needed to, make sure we read our sleep studies after dinner in order to be caught up. So, not wanting to work all weekend and catch up, that type of thing. So we noticed a change in our quality of life right away in terms of our ability to turn work around. We also then noted that our sleep lab manager was noticing that he was then able to integrate some of the other things we needed to do. We need to start reviewing our protocols for the ever eternal accreditation process. So we were able to start putting that process in place and saying, okay, now that we've freed up some time, let's start our weekly meetings to be able to review that. So it wasn't kind of always a chasing our tail about getting the scoring done, that was eating into that time. So that's been something that we've been able to do as well. We've actually been in touch with Cadwell about getting more concrete measurable data in terms of seeing how long the scrub time is taking for our sleep lab manager on those studies, and seeing, if there are improvements there as well. And then also our night techs are now going to be able to do more. We had actually, for the first couple of months of EnsoData, have been having our techs continue to score in order to make sure that there wasn't any, failure, something that was going on. But we've now changed that. So now the techs are, there's a lot of woohoos around that. But then we also kind of have an ask from them as well, which is that, okay, but you have to make sure there's no artifact. You have to make sure you're really doing the troubleshooting. You want to make sure that the data is really clean. You want to make sure the mask fitting's done. We don't want any tech notes that you left open because you were so exhausted in the morning and so distracted, So all of those kind of things, which I'm going to say some of those are very little and they may not be measurable, but they're part of the staff retention, quality of life, all of those little things. When there's little things that are missed, they eat away at us. They take away from our pleasure of what we are doing and, why we do what we do. And these are the things that can kind of beat you down. So we are seeing that those things are decreasing because we're able to shift the time that was taken for scoring, down. So we want to do more quantitative measurements in the future, but right now we are getting qualitative benefits that we are noticing at this time.
That is so important. I mean, everybody, healthcare has been stressed to the max, I think, this last year. And then, something I remember my son when he was little, we went somewhere and it was like a clerk somewhere, and she said, "Oh, did you guys have a good weekend? I'm taking my kids to the zoo." And he said, "She goes home and has kids, right?" Like, healthcare people are stressed to the max at work, and then they're dealing with all the COVID things at home as well, right? Like, it's not just, so thinking about, how everything is impacting them, and really being able to show how much you appreciate and offer them opportunities to catch their breath and really focus on things that they want to do with patient care and that patient journey. I think that's something that it may not be an exact time savings or something very, like you said, quantitative that you can track, but is terribly important for your teams so that they can take care of themselves and take care of the patients. So we did get a lot of great questions in. I'm sorry we ran out of time, but what we'll do is we'll put them all together and send a Q&A out to everybody. We'll put some answers in. I cannot thank you guys enough. We weed out only the best customers that we bring in as well. So, so we really appreciate you taking time. I know you said a lot about the sales team and the customer success team, and I do think they are fantastic, but it is all about the partnership and everybody staying, focused on getting optimal results for the patients. So we just, hats off to you guys for that and taking out time today to share your experience with everybody. Everybody, don't forget that survey is going to pop up. Give us some other ideas on other topics. You can give a shout out to this fantastic panel as well. And you can let us know if you have any specific questions about EnsoSleep. So thank you, Dr. Breaden, Lisa, John, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your week.
This was a pleasure.
Great. Bye.